There is something extraordinary about a woman who walks alone. People may look at her and whisper, she has no friends, she must be lonely. But what they don't realize is that she carries the kind of strength most cannot even imagine. A woman with no friends is not broken. She is not incomplete. She is someone who chose herself over shallow company, someone who refused to shrink just to fit in. When you walk alone, you learn to listen to your own voice instead of the noise of the crowd. You become your own best friend, your own cheerleader, your own protector. The world will often test her. They will call her arrogant, cold, or different. But she knows the truth. Independence is not arrogance and silence is not weakness. She understands that solitude is not the absence of love, it is the presence of self-respect. A woman with no friends spends her time building dreams instead of gossip, chasing goals instead of approval, and investing energy in growth instead of meaningless validation. She knows that real strength is not found in how many people surround you, but in how deeply you believe in yourself when no one else does. And one day the world notices her, not because she begged for attention, but because she created a life so powerful, so magnetic, that even those who doubted her can't look away. So if you are that woman, misunderstood, underestimated, walking alone, remember this: your solitude is your superpower. The world may not understand you today, but one day they will admire the courage it took to stand tall with no one by your side. Because a woman with no friends is a woman who has already discovered the greatest friend of all, herself. Walking alone teaches self-trust and inner strength. Because when you take each step without someone holding your hand, you begin to realize just how capable you are of facing the world. In the silence of solitude, you hear the whispers of your own voice, a voice that may have been drowned out when too many opinions surrounded you. At first, it feels unsettling because we are conditioned to believe that being alone is something to be afraid of. But slowly, you start to understand that it is in this very space that your true power begins to rise. Every challenge you face alone, every decision you make without asking for validation, every problem you solve with no one to guide you becomes a silent training ground for your character. You develop resilience because you no longer rely on a crowd to hold you steady. You develop clarity because your vision is not clouded by the noise of others. And most importantly, you develop faith in yourself because when life forces you to stand on your own, you begin to trust the strength of your own feet. A woman who walks alone is often misunderstood. People see her and think she is lonely, but what they cannot see is the fire she is building inside. When you don't have a circle to lean on, you learn to lean on your own instincts. You discover that self-trust is more powerful than the loudest encouragement from the outside world. The more you rely on yourself, the more you discover that you are not fragile but unbreakable. Self-trust teaches you to stop begging for approval, stop waiting for permission, and stop seeking validation from people who may never understand your vision. It teaches you to hold your head high even when no one claps for you, because you have already clapped for yourself. Strength is not something you inherit. It is something you build in the quiet moments when no one is watching. When you walk alone, you are forced to confront your fears, your doubts, and your insecurities without hiding behind the comfort of others. That confrontation is where growth begins. You learn that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving despite it. You discover that self-discipline is born when no one is there to remind you what to do. You realize that independence is not about rejecting others, but about not collapsing when others are absent. Each lonely night teaches you patience, each setback teaches you resilience, and each small victory reminds you of the power you carry within. People often measure strength by how many shoulders you can cry on, but real strength is measured by how many storms you can endure without breaking. Walking alone makes you face the storm directly. And as painful as it may be, it shapes you into someone who no longer fears the rain. You stop waiting for someone to save you because you have already saved yourself. You stop expecting the world to be fair because you have already built the armor to stand against its unfairness. You stop being afraid of rejection because you no longer depend on acceptance to feel worthy. Self-trust and inner strength transform loneliness into liberation because you finally realize that your worth does not come from the company you keep, but from the courage you hold. Every time you take a step alone, you are proving to yourself that you are enough. You are rewriting the story that says a woman without friends is incomplete and instead showing the world that a woman who trusts herself is unstoppable. Self-trust is the foundation upon which every dream can be built because when you believe in yourself, nothing feels impossible. You stop living small just to be accepted. and start living bold because you have nothing to lose. You stop apologizing for being different and start celebrating that your path doesn't need to look like anyone else's. You stop fearing solitude because solitude becomes the space where your best ideas are born, your deepest strength is revealed, and your truest identity comes alive. Walking alone doesn't make you weak. It makes you extraordinary. It makes you the kind of person who no longer waits for people to stand by your side before you take action. It makes you the kind of person who can fall, stand up again, and keep moving forward without needing someone to push you. It makes you the kind of person who shines, not because a spotlight is given to you, but because your inner light is too powerful to remain hidden. That is the beauty of self-trust and inner strength. They transform isolation into independence, and they turn doubt into confidence, and they turn a woman who once felt alone into a woman who knows she was never truly alone because she always had herself. Solitude is not weakness. It is self-respect, because choosing to be alone rather than staying spaces where you are undervalued is one of the highest forms of dignity. When you decide to walk away from people who drain your energy, ignore your worth, or belittle your dreams, you are not being fragile, you are protecting the core of who you are. Many believe that solitude is a sign of emptiness, that it means you are lacking something, but the truth is it is a reflection of boundaries, of knowing that not every hand extended to you deserves to hold yours. In solitude, you learn to filter out the noise, the pretenses, and the shallow connections, and in return, you give yourself the gift of authenticity. There is strength in silence, the kind of strength that doesn't always need an audience. When you choose solitude, you are refusing to settle for company that doesn't align with your values. It is not a weakness to demand depth, loyalty, and sincerity from those who enter your life. It is a sign that you respect yourself enough to know that you are worthy of genuine connections, not temporary distractions. The world may point fingers and say you are isolated, but what they don't realize is that isolation by choice is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is when you are surrounded by people yet feel unseen. Solitude is when you step back from people and finally see yourself clearly. The woman who embraces solitude is not running from people, she is running toward herself. She understands that constant noise can drown the wisdom within, and so she allows herself the space to think, to breathe, and to grow without interruption. Self-respect teaches her that it is better to be alone with peace than surrounded with chaos. It teaches her that being selective with who enters her world is not arrogance, it is protection. She knows that her energy is precious, her time is valuable, and her presence is not something to be handed out to anyone who demands it. By choosing solitude, she is saying, I am enough for myself, and I refuse to shrink to make others comfortable. There is a sacred power in withdrawing from people who do not honor your worth. It is in these moments of solitude that you rebuild yourself. You learn to nurture your dreams without interference, to heal without judgment, and to grow without limitation. You understand that solitude is a space where you can process pain, reflect on your journey, and design your future with clarity. It is not weakness to step away. It is wisdom to recognize that not everyone deserves access to your heart. When you embrace solitude, you are telling the world that you refuse to compromise your dignity for the illusion of belonging. People often misunderstand this kind of strength. They may call you distant, difficult, or even cold. But what they cannot see is the discipline it takes to honor yourself. It is far easier to surround yourself with noise, to keep people around just to avoid silence. But it takes real courage to choose to stand alone when those around you do not align with your vision. Solitude teaches you to find comfort in your own company, to enjoy the sound of your own thoughts, and to build an unshakable bond with yourself. It gives you the freedom to stop living for validation and start living for purpose. A woman who respects herself through solitude radiates a different kind of energy. She doesn't beg for attention because she knows her worth is not determined by who notices her. She doesn't fear rejection because she understands that rejection often clears the path for the right people. She doesn't cling to false friendships because she would rather walk alone in truth than be surrounded by lies. This kind of self-respect creates a magnetic aura that draws in people who genuinely value her. Ironically, the woman who embraces solitude often ends up attracting the deepest connections because she has already proven to herself that she does not need them to survive. Solitude is not a punishment. It is a privilege. It gives you the space to reset, to rebuild, and to rise stronger. It allows you to see where you have been giving too much and receiving too little. It reminds you that your worth is not up for debate, that you do not need to lower your standards to feel included. It is in solitude that you discover the beauty of your own presence, the strength of your own spirit, and the depth of your own mind. Self-respect is not about arrogance. It is about setting a standard for how the world is allowed to treat you. And solitude is the loudest declaration of that standard because it shows that you would rather stand alone than stand somewhere that diminishes you. A woman who embraces solitude walks with a quiet power that cannot be shaken. She knows that weakness is not in being alone, but in betraying yourself just to avoid it. She understands that real strength is saying no to what does not serve her, even if it means standing apart. She realizes that the most important relationship she will ever have is with herself, and if that relationship is strong, no absence of others can weaken her. Solitude sharpens her mind, strengthens her heart, and solidifies her spirit, making her unbreakable in a world that constantly tries to bend her. She chooses growth over gossip and goals over approval because she understands that her time is the most valuable currency she owns. While others waste theirs in conversations that tear people down, she invests hers in building a life that lifts her higher. Gossip is easy, it requires no vision, no discipline, and no courage. But growth is hard, it demands sacrifice, patience, and focus. She knows that indulging in gossip may bring temporary entertainment, but it brings no lasting fulfillment. Choosing growth means choosing to rise above the shallow habits that keep so many people stuck in the same place year after year. It means using energy to read, to learn, to create, to take risks, to fail and to try again instead of wasting that energy dissecting someone else's life. She understands that every minute spent chasing approval is a minute stolen from building her future. Approval from others is fleeting. It changes as quickly as their moods and is often rooted in their own insecurities. Goals, on the other hand, are steady. They do not shift with opinions. They remain a guiding light even in the darkest times. When she chooses goals over approval, she is saying that her life will not be measured by claps or compliments, but by the progress she makes and the impact she creates. Approval is about pleasing others. Goals are about fulfilling purpose. She is wise enough to know that the crowd that praises you today can turn silent tomorrow, but the goals you achieve will stand as permanent proof of your persistence. There is a discipline in focusing on growth when distractions are everywhere. The world often tries to pull her into meaningless conversations, unnecessary drama, and endless comparisons. But she has learned to say no, not because she thinks she is better than others, but because she values her vision more than their approval. Choosing growth over gossip doesn't mean she isolates herself from the world. It means she filters what enters her mind and her heart. She surrounds herself with conversations that inspire, not drain. With people who push her higher, not pull her lower, with challenges that build her character, not habits that waste her potential. Goals require resilience because the journey is never smooth. There are setbacks, rejections, and failures that can easily tempt someone to give up and settle for comfort. But she has trained herself to keep her eyes on the destination rather than the distraction. Approval might comfort her ego, but goals strengthen her spirit. Gossip might fill a moment, but growth fills a lifetime. By choosing to focus on her goals, she is teaching herself patience, endurance, and self-control. She is proving that her life is not directed by applause, but by purpose. This choice shapes her into someone unshakable. While others get caught up in who said what, who did what, and who is watching, she is busy asking herself how she can improve, what lessons she can learn, and what steps she must take next. She knows that greatness does not come from winning popularity contests. It comes from mastering yourself. She invests in learning skills, developing talents, and cultivating a mindset that refuses to stay average. Growth requires solitude, discipline, and sometimes painful sacrifices, but she embraces them because she knows the reward will be far greater than the temporary comfort of approval. There is freedom in no longer needing people's validation. When she chooses goals over approval, she frees herself from the exhausting cycle of trying to please everyone. She no longer feels the pressure to be liked, to fit in, or to conform to expectations that do not align with her vision. Instead, she stands firmly in her authenticity, knowing that those who truly value her will support her even if she does not bend for their approval. And those who do not support her were never meant to walk her journey in the first place. Choosing growth also changes her environment. She understands that the people you spend time with shape your future, so she is intentional about who she allows in her space. She does not entertain gossip because she knows it kills focus. She does not chase approval because she knows it dilutes purpose. Instead, she seeks out mentors, visionaries, dreamers, And Doras, people who challenge her to rise instead of dragging her down to mediocrity. She knows that iron sharpens iron, and so she builds her circle carefully, ensuring that her time is spent with those who push her toward her goals. The path of growth is not glamorous, it is full of long nights, silent battles, and unseen sacrifices. While others may laugh at her for being too serious, too focused, or too distant, she understands that success often requires being misunderstood. Approval seekers may find comfort in belonging to the crowd, but goal seekers find fulfillment in standing apart. Growth does not happen in comfort zones, it happens in discomfort, in risk, in persistence, and in failure. She welcomes those challenges because they shape her into a woman who is strong enough to stand tall in any room, not because others approve of her, but because she knows she has earned her place. She chooses growth over gossip and goals over approval because she has a vision bigger than her fears and a purpose stronger than her need to fit in. She understands that gossip fades, approval shifts, but growth lasts and goals transform. She is not living for likes, applause, or validation. She is living for impact, legacy, and fulfillment. Every time she chooses her goals over someone's opinion, she strengthens her backbone. Every time she chooses growth over gossip, she sharpens her mind. And every time she chooses herself over the crowd, she proves that true power lies in building a life that does not depend on anyone else's permission.